may be seated. Recently, I've been thinking a lot about how I pray. I know you probably think that's a normal priest thing that we do all the time, but I haven't really done this in a while. I've noticed, not talking about the prayers that we say here in church or the polished ones that I'm invited to lead at various gatherings. I'm talking about the prayers that I say kind of deep in my heart, oftentimes when I'm alone. Sometimes they're eager prayers when I don't feel that well, or maybe they're the desperate prayers I say late on a Saturday night when I don't have my sermon done. Thankfully, I wrote this on Thursday morning, so we should be okay. But what I've noticed is that in my prayers, I'm always asking God to do something for me, either take something away or to give me something more. Dear God, take away my stomach ache or my headache or whatever is going on with my health. Take away the uncertainty or the conflict that I'm experiencing with friends or loved ones. And give me more. Give me more time, more resources, more words, or in this case, the right words. Maybe not more words for a Sunday sermon. But I wonder when the last time was that you heard someone pray something a little different. Something that goes something like this: God, help me boast in my hope in you today. When was the last time you prayed, Lord, let my life be a proclamation of what you are up to in this world? I don't know about you, but these types of prayers feel almost inappropriate or reckless. My family would say, you're not supposed to boast about anything. You're supposed to be humble after all. So this idea of boasting in hope seems totally irrelevant and inappropriate, especially given our circumstances. The news being what it is, personal struggles being what they are. But when we look at St. Paul's writing in Romans today, we start to understand a little bit more about why Paul is admonishing us, encouraging us to boast in our hope. Boast in our hope of sharing the glory of God, he writes. Now, some of you have probably walked in with some images seared in your mind from over the weekend. The Middle East especially, missiles over Tel Aviv and explosions in Tehran. And we get to a passage like Paul's and we wonder, how can Paul be so confident about hope when we're seeing violence escalate in real time? And when it feels like the world is spiraling towards something that none of us can control. But Paul doesn't really begin with something easy. He doesn't say, don't worry about that, or just think positive thought. Actually, Paul begins exactly where we are today, exactly where you might be right now. He says, after boasting in our hope, he says, we also boast in our sufferings. Not because suffering is good, Paul is not that naive, but because Paul believes that through suffering, God is doing something. Something is being produced through our suffering. And this is where his logic gets kind of interesting. You see, he maps out this strange transformation that happens through our difficulties. Suffering produces endurance, he says. Endurance then produces character. Character produces hope. It's like he's describing some kind of divine alchemy where the raw material happens to be our hardest experiences in life. The hardest stuff that we have to go through, that's where God starts God's work and begins transforming it into something different. Not happiness and not even relief. God's ultimate goal is to transform it into hope. And then Paul makes this audacious claim that this hope doesn't disappoint us. This hope actually revives us through the power of the Holy Spirit. Now, Paul is not just talking about this in a vacuum or in a void. He's actually talking about this in relation to the real world. And this is where he gets a little bit subversive. You see, the world has its own hope-making machinery. It's got its own story about where hope comes from. The world's hope says that if you accumulate enough resources, you will be secure. The world says if you defeat your enemies, you'll be safe. The world's hope is built on conquest and profit. And if we're being honest with ourselves, we actually kind of believe that because when we look at it, it seems to work out fairly well for some people. Right now, we're watching this tragically play out in the Middle East. Each side believing that the right amount of force will finally make them safe, that through enough retaliation, the threat will be ended. It's the same logic that's driven human conflict for millennia. If you just defeat your enemies, you will be secure. It makes a lot of sense. Strike first, strike harder, and you're good. But Paul comes in and he says, actually, we are proclaiming a confidence in sharing the glory of God, not because God has conquered, not because God has profited, but we share the glory of God because God dies on a cross. Now, this is either the most foolish thing that's ever been said, or maybe just the most revolutionary. Because what we're betting our lives on as Christians isn't the God who conquered Rome. It's the God who let Rome crucify his son. We're not wagering everything on a God who has accumulated wealth and power, but on Jesus the Christ, who emptied himself and became poor for our sake. The world says, follow me and you'll win. Jesus says, follow me and you'll probably die in some way or another. And yet somehow mysteriously, I'm telling you and promising you that that is where the real life begins. That's where the real life begins. And this is where Paul kind of maps out this strange progression from suffering to endurance, to character, to hope, confidence. When what you're counting on is anchored in the crucified God, when you end up suffering, it doesn't destroy you. What it confirms for you, though, is that you're following the right person. When we suffer, it doesn't destroy you, it confirms for you that you're following the right person, because your life will start to look like Jesus' life, marked by love that actually costs something, not cheap love. Service that involves sacrifice, trust that gets tested and proves genuine. The world promises, you're going to be rich, you're going to win, you're going to receive the glory. But the church says we're being changed into people who can actually proclaim with confidence God's love and the truth that is deeper than any other reality. That truth that even overcomes suffering and death itself, the truth that God is love itself. That confidence, that hope has not been purchased by conquest but by crucifixion. That trust isn't threatened by our sufferings because it's grounded in a God who knows suffering inside and out. It's Trinity Sunday. The Trinity kind of sneaks in a little bit. The Father sends the Son dies and rises. The Spirit is sent to actively transform us into people who can live this upside down hope in a world that looks at us and thinks we're a little crazy. And that's okay. We're not just waiting for the resurrection on the other side of death. We're being resurrected here and now, one costly act of love at a time. Thanks be to God. The confidence Paul talks about isn't confidence that our circumstances will change, though they might. It's a confidence, a hope that God's love is the deepest truth of all reality. Deeper than whatever we're walking through today. It's trust. It's trust that the same God who raised Jesus from the dead is actively at work in our endurance, in our character formation, in our capacity to love, even when loving costs us something. So, if you're lost, I'll land it for you. What does this look like, right? What can we do? This week, Instead of only praying to God to change my circumstances, I'm going to try to pray one of Paul's prayers. God, help me proclaim with my life what you are already up to in this world. I wonder what will happen when I look at my own relationships, right? Maybe it's for you a difficult child or an aging parent that's driving you a little nuts. Maybe it's a job situation or a health concern. I wonder what would happen if we actually prayed and believed that God was already up to something in the midst of that difficulty. And for those of you who might be visiting today, or maybe you're new to the faith, or maybe you're just beginning to explore what faith looks like to you, I wonder if you've already, even in these first couple of minutes, noticed something different about the people who are in this room right now. What I think you'll notice is not that we have fewer problems or easier lives, but that somehow the people in this room are more confident, not less, because of what they've collectively been through. If that's true, it's not because we're naturally optimistic people, as though we've gathered together a personality cult of optimism here. It's actually because we've discovered together that God's love really is the deepest truth of reality. That God's love is deeper than anything else that we could experience. And we'll tell you about that truth in our own lives in kind of quiet ways. It's not something we can hoard or keep for ourselves. It's actually something that grows when we share it. So maybe the next time someone asks you how you can have confidence when the world is the way it is, you could say, what I'm counting on is not that God is going to fix everything. But what I'm counting on is this God who's already been through it. And God is up to something, transforming a mess, transforming an absolute mess into something that looks like resurrection, something that looks and feels like new life. So maybe my prayers need a little renovation. I don't know if you're like me. Maybe alongside of give us this day our daily bread, I need to pray, give me today that hope. Give me that hope in your love, O Lord. Not confidence that everything will go smoothly, but confidence robust enough to proclaim even when everything does not go smoothly. And I think that's what Paul's really getting at here. You see, Paul would look out at the world and say that the world has lost its nerve. The world has lost its nerve. People have been so hurt so many times that they can't imagine that love really is the deepest reality. People who have been let down so frequently, they've forgotten what it's like to actually trust. But then there's us, sitting in this room, 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning in hot June. People who have discovered that God's love is deeper than our disappointments, it's wider than our failures. God's love is more persistent than our doubts. We're the ones who've learned to bet everything on the God who specializes in bringing life out of death and beauty out of the ashes and even confidence out of suffering. So go ahead. Boast in your hope. Boast in your hope by proclaiming with your life what God is up to in the world. Because if we don't, who will? If not now, when? The world is waiting for people who have learned the secret that Paul learned, that God's love really is the deepest truth of reality. And the folks out there, they're waiting on you. Amen.